system, and it's all due to what's actually happening above us. So through tonight, we have a lot of low-level moisture that's kicking up ahead of this cold front. As that cold front pushes south, it's going to kind of wring it out almost like
A severe thunderstorm warning has been issued for our area.
Along that cold front, bringing in the threat for some thunderstorms, and those thunderstorms are what's really bringing in all those storms and those super soakers. So we have the upper winds that are going to help push those storms to the east. So most of the severe threat is going to be stretching from all the way from St. Louis all the way over to Syracuse, D.C., and Pittsburgh. But first, we're going to take a closer look and keep an eye on Ohio. Ohio, you are in the medium threat for seeing the largest wind and hail. 1 inch or greater hail is that medium threat, and the winds are the main concern for today. It's including Columbus, even Cincinnati. And in Cincinnati, you're having some activities this weekend. If you're planning on hitting up the Kentucky Speedway, we do have some NASCAR events, so this isn't really what you want to see as we get through this evening. 7 p.m., the system tries to bow out a little bit, so expect very, very gusty winds, damaging winds right here as we continue through the rest of the evening and into tomorrow morning. Things kind of taper off, but we still have some storms on the way. Now let's turn our attention to the tropics. When we talk about all these records potentially being broken, we think of the climate. So let's take a look at this past month alone, and then we're going to take a look at the year to date. So first, this month alone, or this past June, I should say, we are in July. Overall, we've been above average. We had the warmest temperatures focused on the west coast. Now, second wettest June was in Florida. On the flip side of that was the second driest June was in Nebraska. Hard to believe that we have been seeing so much heat that we actually had some drier weather picking up across the northern plains. Now, June, here's a look at what we saw. We had much of the west staying well above average.
A severe thunderstorm warning has been issued for our area.
Mid-Atlantic, but the southeast stayed pretty much below average. That's pretty interesting, especially when we take into account the entire year. So far, this has been the 5th warmest year ever on record. This is incredible. The record warmth was in the southeast. Hard to believe because June was below average. And the record precipitation was focused in Idaho and Michigan, so the northern states. We had a lot of storms that pushed through the area earlier this year. And the overall temperature rankings, we had much of the country staying above average. And it's Lightning Week at Weather Channel. We're going to have a very cool story right after this.
It's Lightning Week here at the Weather Channel, and we've shown you the dangers of lightning and the impact it can have on you and your loved ones years after it happens.
One man who knows all about that all too well is given time to share your story with us. And you were struck with lightning 3 years ago in June 2014. Take us back to that day and tell us what happened.
Cutting the grass, I started raking up some leaves. And it was around the time that I was raking leaves that I heard what I assumed was a tree falling because of the crashing sound.
No recollection of what happened. You heard a noise and then you woke up later.
Correct. I woke up.
Wow. So now, did the doctors tell you that and confirm that you've been struck with lightning, or how did that happen?
Yes. As soon as it happened, I had actually contacted my wife and told her what had happened, and she didn't believe me, so I had taken a few pictures and made some videos and sent them to her, and she encouraged me to go to the hospital and discovered that I had a very erratic heartbeat. They had to give me a bunch of fluids to try to flush some of the metals out in my body that I guess kind of solidify when you get any type of electrical shock like that.
A severe thunderstorm warning has been issued for our area.
How has it changed?
Since then.
Incredible. I mean, so how has that impacted your approach to severe weather now?
We have about 20 seconds.
Oh, yes.
Definitely, I don't take lightning strikes, you know, lightheartedly anymore, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Sean O'Connor, thank you so much for taking this. All right, as you just heard, a storm doesn't have to be right over you to be dangerous. We're going to explain the...
All right, and millions of Americans are going to be dealing with tropical weather in a way. I don't know. I mean, we have Tropical Depression 4.
Yeah,
that's picking up.
I mean, at a minimum, we're going to be talking about some heavy rain probably coming to Florida. And so, yeah, millions could be looking at some very heavy rain coming up here next week. Here's Tropical Depression number 4. It is really barely hanging on at this point. It's moving west-northwest, 21 miles per hour. It is expected to degenerate into a remnant low, and that remnant low is going to move to the west-northwest, north of the islands. You look at the visible satellite picture right now, and it's really difficult difficult to pick out a surface circulation. You know, one of the things we look for is a west wind, and you're not really seeing that right now. You're not really seeing a clear-cut case of a west wind. You're seeing more of an elongated area of low pressure, and then you can see how this is kind of milkier over here. That's
Yeah.
very dusty air, a dry, dusty air coming from the Sahara Desert that has gotten involved in the circulation. So this thing, there's the moisture right there, surrounded by dry air, and that certainly doesn't help. It's going to run into wind shear as well. But this moisture is going to make its way towards Florida. That might be as early as Wednesday, might be as late as Friday. Timing is a little questionable at this point, but we know there's probably going to be a slug of moisture, and that's probably going to be about it from this system.
Okay, so not quite the level of flooding that we saw just in that clip just a moment ago, but
Yeah.
still major impact.
Yeah, I mean, there could definitely be some very heavy rain. Now, looking at Africa right now, we've got another wave that is coming off the coast, and this is always interesting. You know, you've got this very hot desert, temperatures in the 100 and teens right there, and then temps in the 70s and 80s down there. So that temperature gradient sets up a wind in the mid-levels of the atmosphere called the African easterly jet, and that African easterly jet creates a horizontal spin in these waves as they're coming off. So a lot of times they're already starting to spin even as they're coming off the coast of Africa, and we're watching a big wave right now, and we can show you that in the modeling. Here it is right here. This big wave comes off next couple of days, perhaps turns into a more robust spin as it nears the coast of South America and comes towards the Lesser Antilles. That's the GFS model. The European model is generally on board with this idea. So we could be talking about more significant impacts in the Caribbean getting into the latter part of next week, and then maybe some impacts beyond that. So there's a lot of stuff on the table at this point with this particular system.
Yeah, it's definitely worth watching for sure as we continue to get closer and closer to next week. And millions of Americans are sweating it out